the ways in which to meet that forever person seem to be dwindling. And of course, that led everybody straight to the apps. And now there's not just one app, there's not just two, there are tens of these apps. And so if you put yourself out there on more than one, as you can imagine, it becomes very exhausting and a huge time suck.
This is episode number 569 with Lisa Hutcherson, and we're going to be talking about how to get over dating app fatigue. This is something that gets talked about all the time in my Facebook group with my clients. It is really exhausting to be on the dating apps, especially after the pandemic. Things have changed out there in the dating world, and I'm looking forward to this conversation with matchmaker Lisa Hutcherson. But before I bring her on, I want to welcome you back to Last First Date Radio, where we believe it is never too late to go on your last first date. And to support you on your journey to lasting love, I wrote 2 books. The first one is called Becoming a Woman of Value: How to Thrive in Life and Love. And this book is about really building your core confidence and competency in love and life. It gives you lots of steps and exercises to help you build that. And the second book is called Choice Points in Dating. And this book was just published in February of 2023. And I wrote this book because I kept hearing people talk about, I'm not a choice, I don't have a choice, or there's too many choices, or I don't know how to choose the right partner. And it all boils down to who to choose, how to choose, and when to leave, how to know it's your last first date. We're going to talk a little bit about that today in our conversation with Lisa as well. And you can get both of these books on Amazon for Kindle or paperback. And I share a tip every week from the Woman of Value book. This week's tip is step number 8, which is be more vulnerable. Most people misunderstand vulnerability. They think of it as either oversharing your wounds, all the hard stuff on a first date, and I should tell them everything. They should know I had breast cancer, or my mother was crazy and a narcissist. But no, that is not vulnerability. That's actually crossing a boundary and oversharing. What vulnerability is sharing that you're a little nervous on the date, or you're so excited to see them. In the beginning, that's vulnerable. Just showing up to the date can be vulnerable. But when you start to get to know somebody, vulnerability really means sharing more of your feelings, sharing more personal information as you build a relationship. So my challenge to you this week is to be a little more vulnerable, whether it's on a date or with somebody else in your life. Just share a little bit more about who you are, and don't just think that you have to come to every relationship all perfect and looking like you have it all together, because you want to be human and you want to be relatable. Before I bring Lisa on, I want to invite you to join my Facebook group. It's called Your Last First Date, and we are an amazing group of women over 40 who are looking to go on their last first date. It is a positive place of support, which is rare in the Facebook world of Facebook groups. So join us there. And now for my guest, Lisa Hutcherson. She is the Vice President of Selective Search, which is the nation's premier luxury matchmaking firm. They combine a personalized interview process with a review of over 225 key indicators to ensure that users find compatible long-term partners. As a dating and relationship expert, she has been featured on various news outlets, including Fox Chicago, Arkansas Style, and WGN. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Sandy. It's such a pleasure to be here. We speak the same language, you and I. I love it.
That's good. It's always good to know.
I'm hanging on to every word of your dating tip for this week, and it's like, oh yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it, that we can do this work in different parts of the world, and I think that it all boils down to some really simple things. And we're going to be focusing today on dating app fatigue. It's something that I've spoken about, I've been hearing about. So how do you define it, and what do you believe has caused this fatigue that most of us feel?
Right, right. And as a matchmaker, as you can imagine, I talk to hundreds of single men and women on a weekly basis, and I hear it time and time again. So it's actually a very, very real syndrome, I guess we could call it. Swipe-itis, lots of names for it. But it's just that general fatigue and overload and disappointment time and time again. And it's a very, very real thing. What's caused it? Many different variables. The pandemic certainly didn't help. Time has gone by, and the older people get, there's not that serendipitous meeting on a corner. People's faces are in their phones more often, and they're not just striking up a conversation in the Starbucks line or at the gym. So the ways in which to meet that forever person seem to be dwindling. And of course, that led everybody straight to the apps. And now there's not just one app, there's not just two, there are tens of these apps. And so if you put yourself out there on more than one, as you can imagine, it becomes very exhausting and a huge time suck, not to mention just emotionally draining.
I totally agree. The exhaustion, I think, also comes from the lack of communication. I mean, you're kind of touching on the horrible communication that happens when people stay on the apps.
Mm-hmm.
And also there's a lot of people just disappearing. It's just,
Right.
It's like that ghosting, and people get really hurt by somebody just disappearing in the middle of a conversation. It's like, what do you do? And so let's talk about some ways that we can overcome dating app fatigue.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a change it up type of situation, or at least manage your expectations. You need to know going into it that it could have some potential draining aspects, of your time and your emotions. I heard a new term recently called ghost lighting. I don't know if you've heard that, but it's a combination of ghosting somebody, but then gaslighting them as well. So not only have you ghosted them, but then you lead them to believe that it's in their head and that you really haven't. I mean, there's just, so many ways to chat about this and all the nonsense out there. If it's something that someone really wants to stick to, I think they have to set parameters and boundaries around it. I don't think it's something that needs to take 2 hours of their day or the continual swiping. There's even a condition out there that once you finally get to the point of having that first date, if it takes, 2 months of conversation through texting or emailing, and you finally have the opportunity to meet someone for dinner, I've heard that right after that dinner, both parties go home and get right back to swiping. It's a kind of a grass is always greener situation. They know there's this endless pool of opportunity, not great opportunity, but they think, if they get right back at it, they can keep swiping away and find something even better, which is awful. They're not setting roots and giving anything a real chance. So definitely set some boundaries around how many apps you might get on, how much time you're willing to spend. Don't give up time with friends and family or work, kind of don't lose yourself, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So one of the chapters in my book, one of the first chapters is the paradox of choice, of too much choice.
Yes.
And so we have either too much choice or we feel we have too little choice. And so there's finding that choice point in between where, yes, there are choices. So if something doesn't work out, there are always more people out there. But that's not to say keep looking even when you find somebody who's worth exploring. And I think people don't spend enough time really getting to know the person in front of them. Mm-hmm. It's that, oh, well, let me look behind you because there's somebody right there. Right. I mean, I experienced that when I was in my 20s before dating apps, and I was living in Manhattan, and we'd be standing outside and there'd be people talking to each other and socializing, and they'd be looking right over your head. And it was just like, I'm here. Look at my eyes.
Well, and people aren't going to change. And, that's just kind of where we are in today's society. It's a different place. It's a very different environment as far as dating goes, as you know. I mean, that's what you're preaching to your clients and audience as well, that you got to hang in there.
Let's say you meet somebody and you
Mhm.
don't spend 2 months getting to know them on the app. You
Yeah.
actually meet them, you like them, but you're not sure if they have long-term potential. What are some of the green lights or the must-haves that people should look for?
Yeah, that's interesting. We talk about green lights, of course, and the non-negotiables and what makes the groundwork for a healthy relationship. But there's also those red flags as well. I think we need to talk about both. So as far as, setting yourself up and, for success and is this a relationship that potentially has legs? First and foremost, non-negotiables. You don't lose yourself. No settling here. Are you and this person on the same life page? Do you share the same goals? And I'm talking, do you both want children? Do you want to be married or married again? Or are you looking for more of a long-term committed relationship and just living together? Those types of goals are super important. Nowadays, you got to talk about politics and religion and, some other things just to make sure that you align. You don't have to agree on everything. Healthy debate is also very important. It's not like you're trying to find your clone. In fact, you shouldn't. But, there's definitely the deal breakers and you shouldn't be settling at this point. I think, too, if you can be your authentic self with this new person, that's a real key indicator for longevity. There's going to be a honeymoon phase. There's going to be those, first month or two of all these fun, exciting first date type things. But once that honeymoon phase is over, are you letting your hair down, so to speak, and not showing up with, full makeup and bells and whistles? You've got to show your authentic self and not hide behind, that dating masquerade. So those are really important green indicators.
Yes.
Some things to think of on the other side, does this other person invest in your friends and in your family and in your life that already exists? Are they willing to, spend time and invest in the people that you feel important? Could be a huge red flag if it's always about him or her friends, and that there's no give and take and no sharing of friends, family, and activity outside of just the two of you. So those are also important.
People are either very focused on the red flags and they'll find them when they're not even there. They kind of make them up, but they're like, oh my God, he's a lawyer. I hate lawyers. That's not a red flag.
We'll cover that. Now you're getting into matchmaking. You talked about the 225 key indicators, and that's one of them. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about some other red flags.
Yeah, or just the longevity. Is this relationship going to hold tight? Can you have the tough conversations with your partner? And obviously that's not something that's happening on that first date or second date. But when you get into the developing a relationship stage, can you talk about money, or is there something going on with one of your families, or health? There are some tough situations in all relationships, and you have to be able to have those tough conversations and not just sweep them under a rug. That might be number one.
Absolutely. And those things come up actually really early on. As much as you're not bringing up the big topics of money and
right,
but you're going to see how somebody deals with conflict if they come late and you say something, or you interrupt them because they're talking about themselves a lot, and you want to change the conversation. If you redirect the conversation and they get angry and then like storm off, there are people who are really reactive, and it's good to find those things out early on.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. Another thing to be on the lookout for, and this is down the red flag area, is, are there boundaries? The two of you have had these very independent lives without each other. So when you come together, you've got to make sure that you respect each other's individual time. You both probably have careers or children, and things to manage. Is this new person blowing up your phone? Is he texting all the time? Is she showing up at your front door unannounced? That neediness, disrespecting of boundaries, definitely something to be on the lookout for.
I teach whole courses on boundaries. So you're speaking my language. It's something that a lot of people don't understand. And when I got married, my husband did not really have boundaries at all. And I didn't understand what bothered me. Like I couldn't name it. but he would show up at my door and he would try to get me to hang up the phone when I was talking to friends. It was these things. And actually, a friend of mine who I thought stopped talking to me because she was jealous that I got married before her finally told me like 35 years later that she stopped talking to me because she saw me losing myself.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't recognize it because I didn't know myself and I didn't understand boundaries. I didn't understand control. So it's really, really important. I want to highlight this red flag that somebody doesn't have boundaries around time, space, personal requests. If they're ignoring, if they're making their needs more important than yours, all of those things, pay close attention to those big ones.
There's intuition too. I think humans have a natural intuition. What do they say? I'm telling you who I am. You just choose not to hear me. So I think you've got to go with your gut a lot of times as well.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Music Unlimited. You can listen to over 70 million songs and thousands of playlists and stations. Plus, you can now stream your favorite podcasts like Last First Date Radio. You can listen to any song, anytime, anywhere, on any of your devices. Get Amazon Music Unlimited for free for 30 days. Just head on over to getamazonmusic.com/lastfirstdate to learn more and claim this offer. Yeah, let's talk about the gut, because a lot of times, the gut is actually not your real intuition. It's
Right.
a trigger.
Sure.
And it comes from fear and it comes from past pain and trauma. So in your experience as a matchmaker, when somebody says, well, I'm just following my gut, this person is a bad match, I didn't feel the sparks, they reminded me of my ex or something like that. And what if it's not really a bad match in your opinion and they're overreacting based on their trauma? Like how can you help a client who says something like that?
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. We're here to make sure that people not only are introduced to their forever person, but that they're successful in the relationship. So there's a certain amount of coaching and feedback that goes on prior to them ever meeting one another. But then, of course, once they get into the relationship, we stay in that relationship with them. And that is exactly something that's happened. It happens for sure. That feedback after the first date. Oh, I don't know, too quiet, too something. And we have the honor and the privilege to know both sides of the equation. So we can say, oh my goodness, he was just very shy. He was so nervous. He thinks you're lovely, or vice versa. Please, please, please. Our intuition and everything we know about each of you is telling us that you really need to be together and give it another shot. And there have been many, many, many examples where they stick with it on our suggestion and then they end up happily ever after together. So it is a benefit of having a third party in the relationship with you. Not everybody has that benefit. But you should at least, give it one more college try before dumping, so to speak, and just moving on to the next swipeable person. You could literally be throwing away the love of your life. So, give it a little bit more thought than just moving on.
I so agree. I think so many people just make these split-second decisions. A person walks into the room and it's like, oh, it's never going to work. They haven't even had a conversation yet. And there are people.
Yeah, it's a product of the apps.
Yeah, it is a product of the apps. It's a product of the times we live in. I mean, even if people are not on the apps, like, I have a daughter who's 28 now, and all of her communication is through text. It's brief, it's hard. I mean, we FaceTime too, but I'm sure that most of her friendships are people are talking. And I always ask my kids, are you talking quotation marks, or
Or
are you actually right? Are you
this way.
talking with your fingers or your mouth?
Yes.
Right? And it's usually with your fingers. And I'm like, you don't really have context. You don't have emotion. You don't
Right.
get to know somebody. And so when somebody is on those dates and they start to make a connection, what are some of the ways that they can really start to escalate this? Like that, what would you recommend to kind of deepen the relationship early on?
Well, I think you talked about it with your point number 8, and it's the vulnerable aspect to sharing, putting yourself out there. Of course, it's scary, it's risky, but what do they say? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You've got to be vulnerable. Now, is the first date the place to lay it all out there on the line? Absolutely not. And again, our amazing team of matchmakers coaches people right through that, what to say, what not to say. If a spouse has passed away, when to be bringing that up. If there's trouble with children or parents, those are things that, maybe come in on a second or third date. And every situation is different. But to be your authentic self, to be light and share. It's the only way that humans can make connection is to have some commonality and share. And again, with matchmaking, a lot of that is handled long before two people ever even see each other face to face. We know that there's commonality. We know that it's a good match. But still, if you're out there on the apps and you finally get that chance to meet somebody in person, you've got to be your real self. Don't hide behind some fake dating persona. You got to put it out there.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who tell you not to be yourself. They're saying, "Oh, you should
Boy.
act like this, and this is the way that you hook a man, and this is the way that you flirt with women." And it's just so manipulative and fake. And then all of a sudden you show up as a different person and they're like, "Wait, bait and switch. What happened here?"
Right.
So we don't want that.
Seriously, terrible advice. It's too bad that that type of coaching exists. But it's what the apps are all about. It's not anybody's real picture. It's some picture from 10 years ago. Even the bios are not always true to who the person is. So you kind of get what you got. You've got to be willing to take those kind of risks.
Yeah, I think that also a lot of people who've really struggled with finding love, they think they have to do something. They have to change who they are. And I think it's not just about the apps. It's, I can't find someone, so it must be me, and I must have to change something. Now, sometimes it is them, sometimes
That's your job.
sometimes they're not communicating well. Sometimes they're really not bringing their best self to a date. Sometimes they have some trauma they have to process before they get on a date and start using a person as a therapist. Let's talk a little bit about what you do, the matchmaking process, and how it's different from this whole process we've been talking about. What do you do?
Well, it's very exciting. I could talk about it forever. So buckle in. The world of matchmaking is really the polar opposite of the dating apps. So everything that we do at Selective Search is not only 100% confidential, but completely offline. And therein lies the difference. This is not computer algorithms putting two people together or suggesting and swiping. This is real people. This is experienced matchmakers that are digging in and getting to know each and every one of the clients, but also the person on the other side, the person that we will be matching the client with. So again, the 225 plus indicators of data, that is absolutely important. But there's also just that feel, that intuition of truly getting to know someone. We put people through very, very long stringent interviews. We leave nothing left to chance. We leave every stone uncovered, to make sure that we really not only know that person, our client, and everything about them. We want to know about their parents and where they went to college and what their career path was that led them to where they are today. What hasn't worked in past relationships, their children, their activity level. There's there's so many things, pets, sleep patterns, we get into all of it. But then we also get into the other side, and who is this dream person? Who is the person that we're going to be searching for? I want to know every first tier preference. Obviously, it's a visual, very physical environment. You know, there is that chemistry and attraction, but there's so much more to it than just that. So what we do prior to ever bringing anyone on as a client is this get to know you phase, this interview, this intake, to make sure that we can do amazing work for each and every client. And then the search begins. And the matchmaker and her team of researchers and recruiters digs in and interviews countless men, women, whatever side is looking for a match. And we prepare to present our client with people that we see them going the distance with, someone that we see them with long-term. And we've done all that work. We've done all the vetting and the pre-screening so that we're not wasting anyone's time out on a bad date. We too want to send you out on your last first date. We say that all the time. That's why I say you and I speak the same language. Our conversation is well overdue. So once that is all put together, then each party is seeing, beautiful presentations with biographies and pictures. And of course, there's no bait and switch. There is no picture that isn't up to date. Our clients expect high caliber service, and that is exactly what we do. They're meeting people that fit the criteria that they give us.
It sounds fantastic. And I
is,
know that you have a lot of success.
Yes.
And there are people who have tried matchmaking and have been disappointed. They were promised certain things and it didn't happen. And the other thing that I have seen is, watching the shows that are on Netflix, the Jewish matchmaking and the Indian matchmaking. And one of the things I notice is there's some negotiation around here's what my dream person is.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen them push back hard enough. Like when their dream is something that's so unrealistic. So what do you do when somebody's dream person is actually a dream and not reality?
We have absolutely no trouble pushing back. In fact, we don't accept searches that we don't believe we can do exceptional work for. So if the age range is, too wide, if the physicality is too off, if there's just too many things that are in that dream category, then either we have some real heart-to-heart conversations and bring said person back to reality, or we part ways. If there's just it's a non-starter, then it's a non-starter. But we absolutely push back to make sure that our clients are not hung out to dry, not expecting something that we're just going to kill their hopes and dreams. That is not the business that we're in. We're here to improve people's lives and see people's lives change dramatically with this beautiful relationship and someone to ride off into the sunset with. So no trouble at all pushing back. And this isn't reality TV, so there is a huge difference between the world of real confidential matchmaking and then what's edited, for people to see on TV.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear you push back. And I'm wondering also with people who have patterns that have led them down the wrong path.
Right.
What do you do with those people who are convinced that they still know exactly what is right for them?
Right. Well, we say that their picker is off.
Uh-huh.
They just have not been successful in picking. And again, another perfect situation where if you outsource your love life and hire a professional seasoned matchmaker, then we get to do the picking for you. And, I don't want to say that we're, fist to the desk and you must go out with this person, but boy, we definitely get in our client's face to let them know, like, God, you've got to give this person a try. It might not be this checkbox person that you think you're supposed to be with, but please just give it a try. And I will tell you, Sandy, it works. We have seen this a million times. A man will come in and say, she must be this, 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 and this. And we'll say, well, that hasn't worked in your last two relationships. why
Right.
don't you quietly and calmly hand over your love life to us and just see us work our magic? And again, that is part of the service. It's changing your path, changing it up. Let us be the person to guide you and search for you and see you be successful.
I think that's very good advice. And I always tell people that love almost always comes in a surprise package.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And I think if you anticipate that, you'll have, we talked about expectations before. If you anticipate that it's going to be somebody you never imagined, you're going to meet them in a way you never imagined. I mean,
that's
you
fun.
know,
That's
yeah,
life. That's exciting to
yes,
just let go, and let us do our job. A lot of people get in their own way, and they need to step aside and let the experts do it. I mean, if you're not a lawyer, you're not doing your own legal work. You're not doing your own accounting. I'm sure not. So this is the same thing, let an expert find your person, hand over your love life, just outsource it and let us do the work.
it's such an important thing. I mean, I've had people who've hired me and then gone off and asked their friends, so what do you think I should do? And their friends tell them terrible things. And it's like, why did you ask your friends to tell you what to do when I've just helped you with this and now you made a mess?
Right.
Or I had a client who went to see her therapist and asked him for dating advice, and he gave her terrible dating advice. I said, you go to your therapist for therapy, you go to your dating coach for dating, you go to your matchmaker for matches. Like, you hire these people, trust the process. Letting go is so hard for people.
It is.
So as we come to the end of this conversation, Lisa, I know we could talk for days, but we do have to close. I always ask everyone this question. What are your final words of advice for anyone who wants to go on their last first date?
Wow. One piece of advice. Oh my goodness. That's hard to narrow it. But as we say at Selective Search, there is someone out there for everyone. There's a lid for every pot, so to speak. So don't give up. Just change it up. That is my advice. If you're doing the same thing every day, if you're going to the same gym, if you're on the same dating app, if you're talking nonsense to the same friend about dating and getting negative and, going down that wrong path, just stop, take a beat, and don't give up. Just change it up.
I like that. Don't give up, change it up. I'm actually writing my third book,
Oh, good.
which will be stories of people who found love later in life and the tips that they all share at the end about what they had to go through to get there. And it's a story of hope. The stories will bring hope, I hope, to
I can
people
be
who
your
have given
chapter
up.
10. I found love later in life, and we excel in it at Selective Search. We call it Encore Love. And there is something so magical about that second time around later in life. You're not raising kids together. You're not up in the middle of the night with the ear infection. It is about the two of you living out your life.
I love it.
Couldn't believe it more.
Well, we're going to have a little interview about your relationship because I'm still in the interview process. So that would be awesome. I'm so happy for you.
Congratulations on your third book too. That is
thank you. Thank you. It's like giving birth 3 more times.
Without Lisa, the drugs.
Exactly. Well, no drugs. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe I should take some drugs to write. Share a website or one link that you would like to share here on the podcast, and then I'll share your other links in the show notes.
Yeah, Selective Search Matchmaking. You can find simply at our website, Selective Search, all one word, selectivesearch.com. You can do /Lisa if you want to talk directly to me. But you will be in the best of hands. The website has amazing information on our seamless process. It's a registered mark process called Meet Your Future, and it'll walk you right through all the steps that we take when you become a client. All of our matchmakers are on our website with beautiful videos of all their favorite love stories. You'll see testimonials from couples that have allowed us to share their story. So lots of information there, selectivesearch.com.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here today, for sharing your wisdom, helping people to be less fatigued with dating and to have more hope and
Yes.
not to give up. Change it up.
Never.
I love it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sandy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to our show. And if you love our show, we would love it if you gave us a follow and rated and reviewed us on Apple Podcasts. It always helps to grow the show even larger and reach more amazing guests like Lisa. And as always, here's to your last first date. If you are ready to get unstuck, gain new tools, become more empowered, and finally find your last first date, I'd love to talk to you. Fill out an application to be considered for a complimentary half-hour love breakthrough session at lastfirstdate.com/application.